My name's Serena Korda. I'm an artist from London. And I've been in Haverfordwest for the last 7 weeks creating a project called Black Diamond. Black Diamond is a project that combines the history and mythology of the Western Cleddau River to produce a rave music track with people of Haverfordwest. And the idea initially came to me because of a conversation actually I had with a friend called Kira Healy who'd lived in and around Pembrokeshire for many years. And she'd told me how she had listened to rave music as she travelled through the narrow lanes and the countryside landscape of Pembrokeshire, and that this music seemed to really intrinsically fit with the landscape. But the beats within it, actually there's something to do with industrialisation and mechanisation. And that's what connects it somehow for me also to the coal mining history of Pembrokeshire. But also she felt there was a deeper connection to the landscape and to the sacred rituals and ancient druidic kind of past that had once occurred within this very landscape. What I'm interested in terms of the rave culture is the politics behind this music, that it set off a whole generation of young people to be very politicised because it was probably the first music in history that was banned, essentially. The Criminal Justice Act actually highlighted the music in its bill. So that provoked a lot of people of the young generation to kind of come together and actually fight for their rights. So it's this politics that I wanted to bring to Haverfordwest because I feel it's a place that has a lot of forgotten and overlooked histories in terms of it was once a bustling, trading market town that is now a bit of a ghost town. And as an outsider coming into that town, I see that it has a huge amount of potential and there was a huge amount of wealth here, but now it's completely the opposite and it's really deprived and it sort of needs to be woken up. And I feel the music of this era kind of connects with that idea of regenerating potentially quite a depressed space. So essentially with Black Diamond, I wanted to bring some ecstasy back into Haverfordwest. And rave culture I also see as tapping into it's a postmodern form of maybe an ecstatic ritual from the past, and this sort of idea that the beats and the tribalism in the music connect very much to the Pembrokeshire landscape. The name of the project itself comes from the coal mining history that I mentioned earlier. So in villages along the Cleddau, such as Hook, which is known as the Black Diamond Village, anthracite was mined, and anthracite was a particularly high in carbon, so it was a very hard, smokeless coal. And when it comes out the ground, it's very sparkly, and therefore people nicknamed it Black Diamond. And I loved the name Black Diamond. It instantly sparked off ideas that sent me down a path of considering the mythological potential of the river. So the reflective surface itself sort of connected me back to the idea of water obviously being used in a way in the past potentially as a base for divination, and also obviously a portal into other worlds. There's also the fact that Black Diamond sounds like a party from the early 90s. It sounds like an album or a nightclub that might have opened up back in the day. So it kind of felt very appropriate, and all the ideas kind of galvanised around this point of the history and the Cleddau. So over the last 6 weeks, I came to Haverfordwest with the intention of meeting local musicians, amateur and professional, who would come to me and take me to certain points along the river that I called sort of sweet spots, I suppose. Not only that they had some kind of pertinence or power to the people that I was meeting, but also that they were acoustically maybe interesting spaces to record in. And so I was taken to all different points along the river, from the source of the river to the mouth of the river. And in that way, I kind of navigated my sense of understanding the history of this space. Doing a series of recordings, so I asked the musicians to maybe improvise in response to their experience in the space, or if they weren't comfortable with that, to play a piece of music that they'd either composed themselves or was a cover of some popular piece of music that they loved. So it's a real combination of samples, and then obviously samples of the river itself at different points. I even went net compass fishing with a fisherman, and that's a very ancient traditional form of fishing which is very particular to this area. And that was fascinating, and a fish was killed in front of my very eyes. And I experienced, I suppose, we kind of romanticise nature, and we romanticise the beauty of nature. And I guess through this project I've sort of experienced the beauty of a space, but also maybe the violence of that space and the trauma of that space, because there's quite a traumatic history in terms of the coal mining, and one village in particular being completely sort of wiped out by a coal mining accident. I found a musician here that I wanted to work with called Andy Wheddon, and he's an electronic musician, composer. And I went to him asking him if we could make a piece of music by sampling and processing all of these things that I'd kind of gathered and collected over the course of the 3 weeks in this space. And he rose to the challenge, and he's produced 5 or 6 tracks that are under the banner of Black Diamond. And they've been put onto a CD with all the other musicians that have been involved, who've been sampled with their original recording. And that CD is going to be handed out at the grand finale of Black Diamond.
It's a project about dual histories of the Cleddau River, and one being an old traditional history where it was used to ferry the Black Diamond up and down, and the other was the area was also a haven for the free party scene in the early 90s. So we've been gathering recordings of people playing their traditional instruments, telling them traditional stories, or whatever it is that they've been doing, and Serena has gathered all of those recordings and passed them on to me to incorporate into a more contemporary electronic piece that sort of references the rave culture, I suppose.
This has all been building up to this final day on Sunday the 30th of August, which is going to be a very high tide, and we're controlled by the moon and the tides, and that's what's quite exciting about this project too, because we're working with nature, and nature is sort of governing our decisions and our decision making. We found a boat called the Sea Leopard, and Captain Willie is going to take us and our sound system upstream from Neyland to Haverfordwest, and the boat's going to be playing out Black Diamond music. I'm going to be on land following that boat with a group of people who have been invited to, well, everyone's been invited to follow, but we'll have a bus. We have the Black Diamond bus, which has Black Diamond TV on it. And we're going to be following the boat and following what happens on the boat through CB radio and lots of different forms of communication. And I felt like this was a way of actually giving people the experience that I'd had with musicians through this project, and taking them on this very kind of personal, intimate journey along the space. They'll encounter musicians along the way. So not all the musicians that I've worked with, but 4 of those musicians who are going to play their original piece that they gave to the work to be kind of doctored and mucked up and made into an electronic piece of music. It's brought so many different genres and of music together, and different people that have no associations with rave music whatsoever and aren't interested in it. So Black Diamond for me was a very powerful experience. The actual event itself was a culmination of over 7 weeks of very hard work, getting to know a community of people and work with over 20 musicians and scour the Western Cleddau River, a space that I knew nothing of and needed to be led along and told stories along by the people who had grown up next to this body of water. And it was an absolutely uplifting experience. It was a joyful experience. But it was also about bringing people together on another level, on a deeper level, on a level of maybe creating another way of looking at Haverfordwest and celebrating this town and what it could be.
Yes, well, gosh, Haverfordwest. I just came out to walk the dog and look, come across a rave on this pier side. Outrageous.
Spirits.
Wow, fantastic. Hey, there's life in Haverfordwest,
Even
yeah.
if it's raining, it doesn't
Haverfordwest is on the
matter.
turn.
Right? Dim glaw, dim ots.
Yes.
Dim glaw, dim ots. That's what I have to say.
Bringing love and peace.
Yeah,
Thank
indeed.
you.
Yeah, hedwch a chariad I chwi ffordd.